Minecraft Hardcore, the hardest difficulty in Minecraft. The game is locked on hard mode, and if you die, your world is deleted forever. I'm going to be attempting to survive 100 days in Minecraft Hardcore, something I've never done before despite playing Minecraft for over 8 years. My goal is to beat the game by defeating the Ender Dragon before the end of the 100 days. Now, join me on my journey as I attempt to survive 100 days in my first ever hardcore Minecraft world. So after loading into my newly created world, I wandered around Spawn for a while and looked for a place to stay at since I'm really indecisive about choosing where I want to live. I was going to spend 100 days in this world after all, so I wanted somewhere I was comfortable in. I didn't really like the mountains or savannah, but I came across a birch forest and got some wood, since I had completely forgot to do so beforehand. I made a wooden pickaxe and upgraded to stone tools, then crafted a furnace to cook some pork chops I got from nearby pigs. However, I wouldn't stay in this forest for long. I realized that the savannah area was going to be useful since I wanted to find a village, and there was probably a desert near it as well, so it'd be a lot easier to spot a village there if there was one. I packed up my stuff and left in hopes of arriving before nightfall, but it eventually got dark and I found a few sheep, so I crafted a bed and slept through my first night. In the morning, I immediately continued my journey over to the savannah, finding an ocean biome along the way. When I arrived, I started looking around for a village, and I eventually found a desert nearby. After wandering around for a while in the desert, I finally spotted a village in the distance. There was also a pillager outpost nearby, as well as a river and some plains. I quickly looted the village and explored the surrounding area, realizing that I was going to need to set up a base soon. Making one in this area didn't seem like a bad idea, since I had easy access to villagers, an ocean, the desert and savanna, as well as the plains and a few forests nearby. In the plains, I came across a giant pit in the ground, wait, this isn't 1.18, and headed straight down there to grab some iron since I didn't have any yet. After mining some of the iron, well, this happened. Just making sure nothing's like creeping up on me over there. That's not a dungeon, is it? That is 100% a dungeon. Oh, okay, this is perfect. I was like, wait, do I see cobble in there? Yeah, definitely. Okay, I need to turn this iron into a shield because that is definitely a skeleton spawner. And I am on hard mode with no armor whatsoever. I had found a skeleton spawner. Having access to an XP and bone farm was awesome, especially early game, and it was right on the surface in an area that I didn't mind calling home. I grabbed some iron and returned to the surface to see the sun setting, so I began smelting my ore and went to sleep. I woke up and spotted some horses in the distance. I realized that if one of the chests in the dungeon had a saddle, I could easily have a horse of my very own. I made some iron tools and went down into the pit where I came across my first encounter with two hostile mobs. One being a spider and the other being a creeper. I killed the spider just to be cornered by the creeper, and realizing I had nowhere to run, I just hit it back and let it explode. I then put a few torches in the cave they came from and rushed over to spawn-proof the skeleton spawner, surprisingly quickly. There weren't really any skeletons in the way, so I placed some torches and opened the chest to find 2 saddles, a name tag, and a golden apple among some other junk. Not terrible. Since my inventory quickly filled up, I stored my items in a chest and went off to get a horse. The only one I had didn't jump too high or go super fast, but a horse is good to have nonetheless. I decided to go mine in the cave for the first time since I was lacking a lot of resources, and I eventually came across a mine shaft. There was no chance of me going into that mine shaft with barely any armor, especially hearing all the spider noises indicating a cave spider spawner. I continued on and found a ravine as well, but eventually came back and took a peek inside the mine shaft. I didn't get very far before I decided to get the heck out of there, so I came back up to the surface to see the night sky waiting for me. I had brought back lots of coal, iron, and some copper. Overall, a pretty good caving trip. I went to bed and slept through the 3rd night. In the morning, I started smelting all the ore I'd found the night before. I decided that I'd explore the pillager outpost once I had a full set of iron armor, but first I built a beacon out of some spare birchwood so I wouldn't lose my little base. I approached the pillager outpost with my new set of iron armor and left my horse on a nearby hill as a quick escape route. I ran inside, blocked off the entrance, and ran up the stairs to see what was inside the chest, but there weren't really any good items other than a bottle of enchanting. So I hopped down an artificial waterfall and began running back to my base, narrowly dodging the volley of arrows that came hurling towards me at the speed of light. Some of the pillagers followed me as I hopped over the river and went home, but they weren't a big issue. With the extra saddle I had and the few minutes of daylight remaining, I figured I'd try to tame a few other horses to see if I could get a better one. The one I ended up with was good at jumping, but unfortunately it wasn't as fast. I brought him back to base anyways though and hopped right into bed since it was nightfall. On day 5, I gathered up loads of wood and brought some animals back to my base. You know, basic early game stuff. I also added some torches to the top of my beacon. At the end of the day, I ended up coming home with tons of wood, tons of sheep and pigs, and a singular cow. Since the sun set, I didn't have any time to put them all in a hole, so I just went to bed while still holding the crops I was luring them with. I slept terribly since I had the odd feeling I was being watched all night. I woke up and shoved all my animals into a pit since I didn't feel like properly dealing with them, and I also brought back a few more cows since I needed some more. I punched some nearby grass so I could get seeds and start a wheat farm, and in the middle of punching grass I heard some squid sounds nearby, and an axolotl too thanks to my subtitles. I started digging towards the sound and eventually found a tiny underwater pond with a glow squid in it right below the surface. I looked around and finally found a cute little brown axolotl. I scooped him up in my bucket and lit the place up, then put my axolotl back down to get a better shot of him swimming around on video. But then, as I was watching him swim away, I noticed there was another brown axolotl who swam past him. I lit up the rest of the small cave and picked up some glow squid remains. The one I found had suffocated while I was watching the axolotls. Since I already had a brown axolotl and didn't have enough iron to make another bucket, I decided to leave the other one alone and take my axolotl back up to the surface with me. The sun was setting, so I went ahead and slept. On day 7, I looked around for a horse who had good amount of health, could jump high, and go fast, and I even made a jump measurement tower so I could see if a horse was able to jump at least 3 blocks or not. I tried lots of different horses before eventually finding a good one I wanted to stick with, so I brought him back to base. I turned a couple sand blocks into glass and made a tiny enclosure for my axolotl as well. And I know everything doesn't look the best here, but I was focusing more on progressing rather than decorating early game. I'm also absolutely terrible at building, but don't tell anyone I said that. Anyway, I crafted a hoe and started my wheat farm since I need a lot more wheat for breeding animals and food. The sun set before I could make much progress though, so I went to sleep. In the morning, I finished my wheat farm and started up a carrot farm. Afterwards, I got some wood, made an unnecessarily dangerous jump, got some more wood. Oh, I triggered a pillager? That's enough wood for today. I'm cooking some food and going to sleep. Good morning, it's day 9. Today was a great day to abduct the citizens of a nearby village in order to start up a business for my own personal wealth and capital gain, so I spent the day doing just that. Because it takes forever to work with villagers and get them to go where you want them to, the sun set and I wasn't able to bring them back to the base yet. I ran back to my bed and slept through the night before zombies could murder all my newly hired employees. I worked all through the next day as well and finally got 2 villagers back to my base as the sun began to set, and I once again slept through the night. Day 11. I looked around my base, mapping out in my head where I wanted to build my next project, the baby making machine, or villager breeder as normal people call it. With the 2 villagers I already had, I could make infinite workers, so it was going to be a major step up for my business and wealth. I terraformed a bit and made a little area above my cave entrance for the villagers to go, and then I went on a material gathering trip, which consisted of me needing to shear every sheep within about a 20 chunk radius so I could have enough wool for beds so the breeder could function properly. I crafted some of the stuff I needed and sorted my items before going to sleep. In the morning, I finished crafting the materials I needed and began working on the breeder. The design I used was by Zinji, I'll link their video in the description, and it was basically just Impulse SV's design but without the automatic farm above it. The design seemed to work pretty well since I didn't really see the need to automate everything this early on, and as long as it got the job done, I was happy with it. I spent all of day 12 and 13 on my villager breeder and eventually got my skeleton XP farm as well, since I knew they were both going to be very important long term. When the sun rose on day 14, I gave my villagers lots of bread in hopes they would breed, and then worked more on my XP farm until the sun set again, and I would work on finishing my XP farm for the next 2 days. Well, it's technically not complete since it only has 1 hopper in the collection system, but that's all I could afford at the time. Anyways, I tested everything properly and everything worked just fine. This farm would do so much for me in the upcoming 84 days. Satisfied with my work, I headed back up to the surface and went to sleep. I woke up, had an intense fight with a feisty flaming baby zombie, ruthlessly murdered a wandering trader and his llamas because I wasn't interested in what he was selling, then went off to the nearby desert and gathered up some sand for glass and some sugarcane. I came home and planted a bunch of sugarcane since I had yet to do that, and I encased my baby making machine in my new glass so the villagers would be protected. Then I went to sleep. The next day I made a trapdoor above the villagers' heads so I could throw bread into the, cording container. Why did I include that in the script? So I threw some bread in to encourage them to breed. Holy crap, the villagers made a baby. 9 months of work done in a matter of 5 days. These workers really were the best in the business. I went to go harvest my crops and breed some animals, and when I came back, holy crap, there's another baby. 2 in 1 day. That's a pretty impressive double whammy. After basking in the success of my newly blossoming business, I spent the rest of my day grinding at the XP farm. The next day, after critting some creepers and salvaging some sugarcane, I decided it was about time I built a house. So I spent the day planning out where I wanted it to be, gathering some wood, and deforesting a little area I wanted to build my new house in. I decided on the plains area a little further back towards the village, but a good distance from the pit and the pillager outpost. This would be the last night I slept at the pit. I spent the day terraforming and building my new house. I wanted something simple but not too commonly built, so I went for a circular shape instead of an average looking house. The sun set and I ran out of wood before I could make a whole lot of progress though, so I went to sleep in my new area. I spent the next day gathering wood and working on my house. I also found a few chickens and put them in a pit outside. Since I kept running out of wood, I made a huge line of saplings and used some bone meal to make them grow, since I had an infinite supply of bones from the skeleton farm. It eventually got dark and I went to sleep. I spent the next 2 days doing the same thing, chopping down some trees and building up the house, and it was starting to look pretty good so far. On day 24 I went caving and I actually found another zombie spawner very close to my skeleton spawner. I figured that if they were close enough I could make a double XP farm, so I started digging a path connecting it to the skeleton grinder for easy access. I also started working on the zombie farm, but since my tools weren't super efficient and I didn't need this farm that badly, I decided to stop working on it for now and go home. The next day I began moving and sorting items from the pit to my new house, and that took me all day. I gathered some more wood and built up my house a little more, working on the roof and finishing up the overall structure, then sorted my items through the night since I had a roof over my head now and I didn't need to worry about monsters. After all my items were sorted, I went back over to where my skeleton XP farm was and began digging out a staircase down to where I would make my mine. I ran into some cave spiders from the mine shaft along the way, which made me really annoyed, but I eventually got down to Y11 and started my mine. I mined up until the night of day 29 and even found my first diamonds. I didn't mine all of them yet though, since I could wait until I had Fortune 3 on my pick to get more from that vein. I walked home after a long day of mining and holy crap, that's a creeper. Not a problem for me of course, but I made sure there weren't any more in the house before sorting my items through the rest of the night as well as the next morning. I also made a separate double chest for ingredients I would use in a future project, which was a mega iron farm. It was going to be a while before I built it, but I decided to go ahead and prepare anyway. I went out for a bit to replant saplings and harvest my crops, and I spent the rest of the day sorting through items and smelting ores. I woke up on day 31 knowing I still needed to move my animals over to my new home, so I built a simple pen for them to go into and moved them over. This took up most of the day, but I was able to gather some wood for a few minutes before sundown. I also noticed a beehive had spawned on one of my trees, which was very cool. The next day I went mining and it came back with stuff like more iron, coal, and even some lapis I had found. That was going to be useful for enchanting. Holy crap, my roof isn't lit up! Man, creepers love this house. I couldn't sleep because of the monsters on the roof, so I just moved my bed to the other side of the house and I was able to sleep perfectly fine. I woke up and sorted my items, smelted my ore, farmed some sugarcane, bred some animals, and gathered wood. I also searched the village so I could potentially find a lectern for a librarian villager, but I had no luck, so I rode back home and went to sleep. I crafted a lectern the next morning and fixed up the house a little bit before I decided to head down to the mineshaft and try to find some rails. They would be useful for villager transporting. All of day 35 was spent mining and exploring the mineshaft as well as a few surrounding caves. I didn't find anything too crazy, but I ended up with a few rails and a crap ton of iron. I also found some dripstone while I was there, which was really cool, and a pink axolotl. I figured I could use the iron I found to craft rails, so I went ahead and headed home with a full inventory after a long day of caving. I came up to the surface to see the sun rising on day 36. I tried to kill my first enderman, but he ran away because he was scared. When I got home I made a tiny new enclosure for my axolotls in the center of my house. I wanted them to be safe, and this did the job pretty well. It looked like they were having fun swimming around in there. I also bred and executed cows because I was desperately in need of leather so I could make books for enchanting. I then spent the rest of the day smelting and sorting my items from the caving trip, and I also made 9 bookshelves and a grindstone for my enchanting area. Only 6 more bookshelves to go before I could start doing some serious upgrading to my tools and armor. On day 37 I mined the obsidian and diamonds I needed to make an enchanting table. I've also been doing all my other stuff like farming crops and wood and breeding animals, but it was getting repetitive so I decided to leave most of it out for the rest of the video. I tried to sleep that night after making an enchanting table, and even though there was a creeper outside I moved my bed and managed to sleep anyways. However, I woke up the next morning and the creeper was still there. There wasn't much I could do except dash out of the house at the speed of light, but I still managed to trigger the creeper on the way out and it blew up my entire front door. Well, better to explode the house than explode me though, right? Anyway, I fixed up the house and bred and executed more cows for leather since I still needed bookshelves for max level enchanting. After what happened the night before, I decided to work on a wall to protect my land from monsters. I should have done this way earlier since walls are awesome in hardcore, but this wall was going to protect me for a very long time either way. After finishing my wall the next morning, I killed a few more cows for the rest of the leather I needed for bookshelves, and since I now had enough, I made myself a little enchanting table space and enchanted my pickaxe. On day 40 I made my last 2 hoppers to complete my XP farm, and then began transporting villagers from the breeder into my new trading hall. I worked on my villager trading hall for the next 3 days and ended up getting a cheap mending book. Nice! After getting mending on my newly enchanted pick, I was now able to do a lot more mining, which I needed to do so I could get some more resources. So I went down to the mines and decided I wouldn't leave until I had enough diamonds for full diamond armor. I ended up being down there for almost 4 days and came up to the surface feeling 100 times cooler. Now that I had full diamond gear, I decided to go ahead and enchant it. All of it. I spent 6 entire days grinding XP and re-enchanting my armor and tools until I had some basic top tier enchantments, and I was very happy with the results. Unfortunately, at some point my footage corrupted and I lost the next few days, but thanks to the power of replay mod, I was still able to go back and show you guys what I did from day 54 to day 60, so it wasn't completely gone. I am never recording straight to MP4 again, only MKV from now on. When I was finally done enchanting all my tools and armor, I came back up to the surface on the night of day 54 and decided to build a little roof thingy to protect my staircase at night. I was still building my small roof shelter through day 55 since I couldn't get it to look the way I wanted it, and I was getting frustrated since I'm a terrible builder. I decided to keep it simple and spend the rest of my day getting sand for glass. Day 56, I grinded for an efficiency 5 book and quickly realized I was going to need a way better supply of emeralds. I had an idea and it was going to require some materials from the nether. I was more than ready to enter the nether, and if I could get some brewing materials for potions, I'd be able to do a simple trick to get a ton of emeralds. I planned to infect villagers and turn them into zombie villagers, then cure them so they'd lower their prices. If I did this over and over again, their prices would be as low as 1 item for 1 emerald. And while the Fletcher villagers give you emeralds for sticks, and since sticks were easy to craft, it would be really OP to reduce the prices all the way down to insane 1 stick for 1 emerald. In order to pull this off, I was going to need potions of weakness, and to brew them I needed blaze rods from the nether. So on day 57, I actually went to the nether for the first time, and happened to spot a fortress near where my portal had spawned, which was awesome. I spent some time mining to see if I could find netherite, but only found 1 before my pickaxe went to red durability. I came back into the overworld on day 58 and mended my pickaxe throughout the night. And on day 59 I went back to the nether to take on the fortress since I needed blaze rods. The fortress was crawling with wither skeletons and blazes, but it didn't look like there were any actual rooms to explore from where I entered. There also wasn't much I could do without being fireballed to death since there were so many mobs, so I was only able to go home with a single blaze rod. I recall seeing a wither skeleton skull that had dropped from a wither skeleton, but a blaze fireballed it immediately after and I couldn't pick it up. I came home on day 60 and made myself a brewing stand, only to remember that I actually needed blaze powder to power it and make potions. So back to the nether I went. This time my footage wasn't corrupted, so you guys get first person view back now. I was fighting a group of wither skeletons when my shield unexpectedly broke, and one of them had dropped a wither skull, but I didn't realize my inventory was full and it just disappeared. I didn't even see a blaze fireball or anything, but luckily I didn't need to go back home since I was able to use some iron nuggets I had found in the nearby ruined nether portal to craft me up another shield. I was back in business and immediately got another wither skull to drop, but as I was doing a dramatic scene of picking it up for the video while my inventory was full again, and a blaze frickin' sniped it. Are you kidding me? After killing some more blazes, I finally ran into another horde of wither skeletons, and one dropped its skull. This time I was able to pick it up and successfully get the achievement. Yo, another one! After running around and killing some more monsters, I eventually decided to go home since I ended up with all 3 wither skulls, and this time substantially more blaze rods. I got home at day 62 and immediately started brewing my potions. And when nighttime came, I recruited some zombies to help me with my ultimate business master plan. My soon-to-be zombie Fletcher shook his head no in fear as I transported him to his nearby station in a minecart. My goal was accomplished by me basically releasing the zombie into the Fletcher station as soon as I was ready, and then running away to hide and watch from a safe distance so the zombie wouldn't target me instead. Neither the zombie or the villager could escape since I had put a trapdoor at the exit, allowing nothing but me to pass through. Working with villagers and zombies at the same time was very difficult to do at first, but eventually, on day 64, I was able to become a zombie doctor. And sure enough, his price had lowered when he was cured. I repeated this process for the next few days, and while I waited for the zombie villager to cure, I chopped down a bunch of trees from the birch forest nearby to craft into sticks for trading. I also made a small trip to the nether for brown mushrooms since I was going to need a few more fermented spider eyes for weakness potions. I also touched up the house a little since it was really ugly and I wanted something somewhat presentable. By the morning of day 67, the house was looking a lot better. I was happy with it for now, so I continued my zombie doctor work and had a little bit of a close call, but it wasn't a big deal, right? Okay, I'll admit it wasn't the smartest move and I walked a little bit too close to death there, but nah, my reflexes are too good for me to let myself die like that. But after a long day of zombie doctor work, my Fletcher villager had been zombified and re-cured so many times that he was finally trading me 1 emerald for every single stick I traded in. What an absolute bargain. I did some stick trading for the rest of night 67 and had enough emeralds to buy myself an efficiency 5 book. I put it on my axe and also named it something dope, and did some more stick trading through the morning of day 68. But more importantly, I looked around and decided it was time to refurbish the villager trading hall area since I was actually using it a lot more now. Plus, it looked like crap, so I did that for the next 3 days and made it look 10 times better than it did originally. Again, I'm not super good at building, but I think it turned out pretty nice. Oh, and by the way, while this building montage is playing, if you guys have any suggestions for how any of my builds should be improved, or just general feedback on the video at all, leave a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts, plus comments and likes help the video perform a lot better, which is good, because I spent very many hours working on this video, and it's probably the hardest video I've ever worked on. It means a lot to me. Alright, by the time I finished redoing the trading hall, it was already day 71. I killed some cows so I could make more books since I wanted to start grinding for some enchanted book trades like Protection 4 and Unbreaking 3. By day 72 I eventually got 2 villagers, one with Prot 4 and one with Thorns 3, but I didn't have enough emeralds so I grinded some XP while waiting for the stick trades to restock. I managed to get enough emeralds for my Prot 4 book, but I realized the Fletcher's discounted prices were starting to wear off, which was not good. I decided to make more Fletcher slots and went ahead and started filling them in so I could have 4 or 5 times the amount of efficiency with my stick trades. I should have had 4 or 5 Fletchers working from the very beginning, but I just didn't think about it. Oh well, this was a huge step up in business either way, and I was going to be rich. On day 74, I tested out my new and improved Efficiency 5 axe since I was in a wood shortage after using so much on building the trading hall, and it proved to be way faster than ever before. In fact, it was so fast that I didn't even notice when I accidentally chopped it to a beehive. I got stung, but I didn't end up killing the bee. I just ran away and apologized profusely so they'd stop being mad at me. I think that was actually the first time I've ever been stung by a bee in Minecraft. After nursing my wound and gathering the rest of the wood, I began working on making more Fletchers, and I even made it easy for the zombies to get in and infect them so I could cure them as fast and often as I could. After working for a while, I took a step back to reconsider everything, figuring out what enchantments I actually wanted to have before the fight with the Ender Dragon, and I decided that Feather Falling 4, Unbreaking 3, and Sharpness 5 would be the most important ones to go for. So my goal was to have those by the dragon fight at the end of the 100 days. It was now day 75. I have survived 3/4 of the 100 days so far, and I was pretty proud of myself to make it this far in my first ever hardcore world. I worked all throughout the day trying to get the enchantments I needed. I ended up getting really cheap Feather Falling 4 pretty quickly, and I also fought off a very unexpected zombie horde in the process and cured my Fletchers. Looks like the zombie trap worked pretty well. Shortly afterwards I got lucky again, finding Unbreaking 3 as the next enchantment on my list. All I needed now was Sharpness 5 for my axe since I wanted to go ahead and keep Smite on my sword, and I figured it was good to have both. Soon it was morning, and I went back to my house to put Feather Falling and Unbreaking on my boots. I spent the rest of the day touching up the rest of the house since I was getting tired of grinding for enchantments. It's looking way better now. I wanted to go explore a little bit and find some spruce wood to add some detail to my house, and it took a long time, and I found a village along the way with diamond horse armor, and I eventually found the spruce wood I needed and made it home during the night. I planted some spruce saplings outside as well and made my horse look amazing with its new armor, then crafted some spruce trapdoors as a detailed finishing touch to the house. When I was done, it was the morning of day 78. I tried breeding villagers so I could go for Sharp 5 since I didn't have a spare worker, and while I waited I built a nice path connecting my house to the pit area. I killed my first phantom that night, and when I got its membrane I realized I could use it for slow falling potions to make the dragon fight much easier if I eventually got Nether wart as well. The next morning I was able to put my new villager into his workstation without much trouble at all. He was actually pretty good about it. I also walked my path for the first time, which felt awesome. I spent the rest of the day going for the last enchantment I wanted, Sharpness 5, and with patience I finally managed to get it. Since I had all the enchantment book trades I wanted, I went to the Nether and mined for some netherite. But I was only able to make a bit of progress before my pickaxe got low and I realized I didn't have a Breaking 3 on it. So I went up to the surface to try and get some emeralds to buy in Breaking, and I brewed some more potions to get the discounted stick trades. While I waited, I went back to the Nether to use my other pick to get more gold to make gapples, but then I realized I could use my fortune pick on the gold, and I went back up for XP to mend the fortune pick. So I mended the fortune pick only to remember that the Silk Touch one that I was already using would give me 1 ingot per gold ore I smelted, so I could have just done that all along instead of wasting time mending the fortune pick. Oh well. Hey, I mean the time spending my pick was worth it though, since the fortune pick was the only one that could go blast through blocks. I didn't have efficiency on the other one anyway. But when I was done mining gold, I came back to make some gapples. However, I soon realized that I was going to need a lot more gold, so I mended my pick and decided to set off for a bastion the next day. But I never found one. I still came back home with a lot more gold ore and some diamond blocks for a future gold farm though. By this point I was getting tired of constantly looking for gold, so for the next few days I focused on getting materials and making my simple villager breeder automatic. I spent days 87 through day 90 infecting and recuring some zombie villagers, mending my pick again, getting wood so I'd have more sticks to trade, and hunting down some endermen so I could get ender pearls. I decided I'd spend the rest of day 90 mining for some cool stuff for the thumbnail while I was waiting, but I didn't really have any luck. On day 91 I managed to get 3 Fletchers working for me, which was awesome. I grinded for some emeralds so I could get some enchantments for my tools, and finally locate the stronghold on day 92. After riding across the land on my horse, I finally found the spot where the stronghold was located. I killed 2 phantoms and got 5 memorids before digging down, which were going to be helpful for brewing slow falling potions. Eventually got into the stronghold, and I was ultimately able to find the portal room after exploring around for a little bit. I put all the Eyes of Ender in and blocked it off so I wouldn't fall in. I wasn't quite prepared to go in yet, since I still needed a good bow and brew my slow falling potions. And for the potions, I was going to need netherwort. I came out of the portal room through a spiral staircase I dug, so I'd be able to find it and fight the Ender Dragon on day 99. I grabbed my horse, went home, and then went to the nether to find some netherwort. The only problem was I spent all day searching the entire fortress and didn't find any netherwort whatsoever. In fact, the only actual room in the fortress was the one with the small lava well in it. This fortress may have been useful for blazes and wither skulls near the beginning, but other than that, it was quite literally a terrible fortress. I'm sorry. Luckily, not too far away, I found another fortress, and I towered up to it and dug in, immediately finding netherwort and turning around to make my way back home. I got home and started brewing some slow falling potions with the netherwort I got, then I went for a good enchanted bow. I ended up getting a really good power 4 bow with punch 2 and flame. I grinded some XP that night and came up on day 96, and I was now able to put mending and unbreaking on my bow. I made some more steak and went to go make a cool thumbnail, but it started raining as soon as I was ready. Seriously? So I went mining for netherite instead. I eventually found some ancient debris, and a baby piglin ran by to try and yoink it from me. I continued mining for a long while, and on day 97 I returned to the surface with all the netherite I needed. I sold some sticks to Fletcher's and mended my picks from the big mining session. Day 98. Today was the last day I had before I went to the end and had the big fight with the dragon. I prepared my items the best I could to ensure victory, including upgrading to full netherite armor. I took a look at all my land and what I had done in the past 98 days, since there was no guarantee I would ever see it again. I woke up on the big day and gathered up my emeralds to build a monument. Hopefully I'd return here alive to place the egg on top on day 100. After making sure my inventory was ready, I traveled back to the stronghold on horseback and looked into the abyss of the portal, knowing that the fierce dragon was waiting for me on the other side. After a loading glitch that scared the crap out of me, I wasted no time bridging over to the island and beginning the fight. I pulled out my bow to shoot a pillar I could reach from the ground, being careful not to look any endermen in the eye as I did it. I was also able to dodge one of the dragon's attacks and collect a lot of bottled dragon's breath. There were some pillars I couldn't reach, so I took a deep breath and water bucketed up so I could destroy the dragon's remaining life force. The last one was in a cage, so I jumped down and shot through the crack of the iron bars and faced the dragon. I splashed myself with slow falling just in case, but this backfired because I was unable to axe crit the dragon in the face when it perched. On the second perch, I tried hitting it from inside the portal, but it would just render out when I got too close, so I resorted to arrows again. After getting it down way below half health, another perch was made and I readily held Crescent Moon. I managed to hit it despite the visual glitch and got it down really low before it flew away again, so I waited on top of the portal ready to slay it once and for all. And when it finally came down, I looked the Ender Dragon in the eyes and swung my axe, chopping its head open and killing it for good. I stared in awe at the glowing explosion, realizing that I had just beat Minecraft Hardcore for the first time after surviving for 100 days. I collected my dragon egg and went back to my home dimension. The sun rose on day 100. I looked out at the world, just taking everything in and remembering there was still so much more to build and do. And then I went to go retrieve my horse since it was still at the stronghold. Then, after riding back to my land, I watched the sunset on the final day. I had just survived my first 100 days in hardcore Minecraft. I still need to get the elytra, and I have lots more building ideas I want to do, as well as a lot of other stuff. So if you guys want to see me continue the series and play up to 200 days, make sure you guys take a few seconds to just like the video, comment your favorite part below, and subscribe to the channel. Doing all those things makes the video perform a lot better in the YouTube algorithm and helps support me greatly. I'd appreciate it a lot since this video took weeks for me to make and it was very difficult. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.